Hello everyone, welcome to Rome, Italy, the capital of the world, or Capita di Mondo, as the Romans like to call it, the center of the world, the Roman Empire. I'm standing here in one of the most famous squares in Rome, and it's called Piazza Navona. Some people like to think about this piazza as the outdoor living room for the Romans. You know, in those days, the Romans lived in quite small spaces. And as you know, Italians and Romans love to socialize. So the piazzas were really very, very popular. This was where people came to meet. This was where they came to socialize. Piazza Navona, very great piazza, one of the biggest ones. It was actually like a little stadium. That was what it was actually constructed at in the beginning. So, which explains the oval shape. So you can just imagine in the 15th century races and competitions being held here in this really magnificent piazza or square that the Romans really enjoyed. So the fountains were central to Rome, and you can walk all around Rome and you can see many, many, many fountains all over the place. And they weren't just for beauty. Fountains really were sort of an essence of life, and there's many pictures of Romans getting their drinking water from fountains, and believe it or not, even doing their laundry at the fountain. So it was almost the center of Roman life. And so, in addition to the beauty of the fountains, you can find many sculptures. It also had quite a functional use. Piazza Navona has 3 fountains. You can see one right at the end, right behind me. And if I turn around, you can also see a 3rd fountain, if you squint enough, right at the end. But what I want to talk to you today is the centerpiece of Piazza Navona, the fountain in the centerpiece, which you can see right behind me. Now, this fountain was commissioned by no other than Bernini, and that's a name I'm sure you all recognize. Bernini, in his time, in the 1500s, was essentially the most important sculptor of the year. And he was a magnificent artist, and he essentially ruled that period when it came to art and when it came to sculpture. It's a very interesting story about how this fountain came to be. If you look at this fountain, it is really magnificent. A lot of artists were commissioned by very powerful people, and very often the Pope himself. The Pope obviously was a revered figure in Roman times, as it is now. But the Pope and powerful people commissioned artists to do paintings and build sculptures. And in that period, everyone knew that Bernini was really the king of sculptures. There was no other like him. And there's a really funny story. Art, politics, they all intertwine. And art was a way of people showing their power in those days. And the Pope, and there's a lot of politics and wrangling and rivalries when it came to the creation of art. And what actually happened is that in the 1500s, Pope Innocent was the Pope at that time. And when he came to power, because of the politics and the wrangling, for some reason or the other, Pope Innocent didn't actually like Bernini, and he didn't actually he didn't appreciate the power that Bernini, wielded, due to the fact that he was popular and he was such a well-known and revered artist. So Pope wanted to find a way to maybe get rid of Bernini, get him behind the limelight. And at one point, he called Bernini. Bernini was like, knowing that the Pope didn't like him, was like, what is this really about? Anyway, Bernini decided, well, it's the Pope, let me go and see him. And so at that point, Bernini went to see the Pope. He sat with the Pope and said, okay, so you wanted to see me? Here I am now. What is it that you want? So the Pope said, no, just wanted to say hello and knowing how tough you are, just wanted to meet you and have a discussion. And then I'm sure like you, Bernini would have been thinking, what is this really about? So he kept asking the Pope, so what can I do for you? You know, I'm the greatest artist. What can I commission for you? You know, what can I make that you will love? The Pope said, oh no, nothing. I don't need anything, you know. It's fine. So Bernini kept asking, what can I really make for you? But the Pope was not saying anything, and so Bernini said, really, anything, no matter how magnificent, no matter what you want, I can build a sculpture, a great one. Anyway, obviously the Pope is trying to catch him out. The Pope is trying to usurp his authority, if you like. So anyway, the Pope said, what I want you to do is to build a bell on the tower of St. Peter's. Now, any of you who know the history, this was a poisonous snake in a way. You know, it was the ground. Everyone knew that the ground beneath St. Peter's was really not good, and it wasn't stable. So it was almost impossible architecturally to build a massive tower at the top of St. Peter's. So Bernini knew, oh my word, what have I got myself into? But obviously he rose up to the challenge. He wanted to do it, and he decided to give it a go. Why not? Let's try. So Bernini tried. He did all sorts of things, architectural, built ladders, tried to do this thing that many other people hadn't achieved ever. Unfortunately, as often happens, he spent loads of money. He ran out of money. He had many students helping him out. And if you think about all the things that Bernini has commissioned over the years, you will know that it will be completely impossible for him to have built all these structures himself. In fact, some people say that if Bernini had built everything himself that is in Rome and in Italy, he would still be working to this day. So of course he had hundreds of students. So even with all these resources, all these capabilities, unfortunately, he failed. He really couldn't get this magnificent bell tower at the top of St. Peter's. So in a way, the Pope got what he wanted. So people were like, ooh, Bernini has failed. He hasn't managed to do this sculpture. You know, it almost financially ruined him. And the thing was that the power that he wielded as an artist, of course, began to erode, and it was just not good for him. Anyway, the Pope was feeling great, and yes, you know, the great Bernini is now under my control. And then he decided that he was going to do a competition. This was quite often a thing that happened in those days. An art competition where they would bring all the greatest people to see who could do what. So he raised a competition for building a fountain. And he said, I want the greatest fountain in Piazza Navona. But guess what? Bernini wasn't invited. He decided that all the other artists could come, but that Bernini, of course, at this time, his reputation was severely damaged. And he said Bernini couldn't be part of this competition. What a slur to Bernini. Anyway, at the end, all the artists came together and they started to work on this sculpture. Now, there was this woman, and she was often referred to as the Popess. And the reason she was called the Popess was she wielded a lot of power. A lot of people that thought that, you know, she was kind of second only to the Pope. But it so happened that Popess was a good friend of Bernini. And Bernini now commissioned a little little fountain in the center of this woman's house. And at one point, the Pope went to visit the Popess, and of course, he walks into the atrium of a house, and he sees this magnificent sculpture, and he says, "Oh my word, this is really incredible. Who did this?" And Popes said, "Oh," obviously not at the time saying anything, just said, "Oh, it's just a friend of mine who's a great artist in Rome who built this sculpture in my home. Do you like it?" And you can see where this is going, a little bit of a trap. And of course the Pope said, "Oh my word, it is magnificent. Of course I love it. Who's this great artist? And isn't he, why, you must invite him to be part of this great competition that I've done for the greatest fountain in Rome." So she said, "Well, he's only a little artist, etc., etc." So, you know, and eventually anyway, Popes said, "Oh, this artist is Bernini." Now the Pope said, "Oops." Now, of course, he couldn't turn back and say, "Oh no, don't invite him." He'd already sent out the invite for Bernini. So at the end of the day, Bernini entered the competition. And needless to say, he won, because this sculpture that he built, it is called the Four Fountains. And why is it? It's really magnificent because you can see it represents the 4 continents of the world. No, I know what you're saying. There's not 4 continents. There's 7, right? Well, in Roman times, as far as the Roman Empire was concerned, as far as they knew in the world, there were four continents at the time. And each of these sculptures represents the 4 continents. The Americas, Asia, Africa, and of course the 4 continents, the great continents of the world. So Africa was represented, Asia was represented, the Americas was represented, and Europe, of course, where we are, was also represented. So you can see these great sculptures. It's very interesting because here, right in the middle, you can also see an obelisk, and the obelisk goes right to the right. And I know you probably can't see it, but at the top of the obelisk, there is a dove. There's a dove with an olive branch in its beak. Of course, there's loads of symbolism in this, and the dove with the olive branch represents peace across the world, which in essence the Roman Empire has done, bringing the world all together and representing the 4 continents. So here in Piazza Navona, I'll just take a little walk around and show you each of the sculptures. Very interesting, representing all of the continents. I want to come and show you something. Look at this beautiful sculpture right behind me. Now this is a sculpture here, if you can see it, that represents Europe. Now look closely if you can. Now you would think that you would see some sort of a Roman Empire or something representing Europe. But here on this is a sculpture, and look closely at the features. Look at the bald head of the sculpture. Also look at the feet, very thick, set feet. And if you look closely at the feet, you even see very thick lips, because this sculpture is actually of a black man representing Europe. And you think, really? Surely that should be Africa, but no. At the time, Bernini was obviously a very controversial figure. And even though Europe, of course, had a lot of things that they did for slavery that today we would think how horrible that is, during that period, there was there was a movement against slavery, and Bernini was making a statement piece about Europe's role in slavery and how Europe had made so much profit out of slavery. And here there is essentially a slave. And you can almost make your own interpretation. Is the little thing on his ankle? Are those chains? What are those? But right across this sculpture, there's a numerous amount of symbolism. And you can see right in the middle, that's the coat of arms of the Pope, Pope Innocent, during the 1500s. And that coat of arms represents the power of the Pope that he commissioned. And of course the fountain is water going right across. And the water represents the seas. It represents the seas of the world and the oceans and the continent. You know, really flamboyant and very well done sculpture here. And if you look at this sculpture here represents Asia. No, this is the one that represents Africa. And how come it's Africa? Because it talks about the River Nile, right? The River Nile, the largest river in Africa that flows right through. But at the time, and even now, people weren't quite sure of the source of the River Nile. Where did the River Nile actually start? I think geographically it's a bit of a debate. And so this sculpture here actually shows a man with a scarf covering his head. And you know, there's a lot of interpretation here. The man covering his head is kind of not knowing where the head is, where things start. So in that way, this sculpture here represents the River Nile, and it represents Asia. So this great fountain, the fountain of four rivers, that shows the four continents, the great world. It really is a magnificent creation by one of the greatest artists of time. You have to come here, you have to see it, you have to mingle, you have to enjoy the atmosphere and really soak into the history of the Roman Empire, the greatest empire that we remember. There's a lot of history here. So come and join me, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let me take you on a tour of this great city of Rome and enjoy the delights that are here for all to offer and see. I'll see you soon. Take care. Ciao tutti. Buon giornata. Arrivederci.